Yeah, y'all. One LVZ back with another video about to go ahead on and respond to my brother Ticket TV. Y'all make sure y'all subscribe if you already haven't. Ticket be coming with that ether sometime, but this time he came with that motherfucking green ethyl rubbing alcohol that you put in the bathtub that don't do nothing for you but make you feel good when you get a massage. Cause that absolute crap that man was talking is ridiculous. See, what y'all don't know is overseas. See, Ticky play ball, he can't smoke, so he's smoking that peyote. They don't test for that peyote. Anyway, bruh, what is wrong? Let me go and break this down. First of all, he did the white supremacist trick, y'all. He made y'all think I said some shit like Jimmy Butler ain't good. When y'all were watching my thing the other night, when I'm the one calling them Jimmy Buckets. No, Jimmy Butler is a very, very good player. He's an all-star. And his achievements on the floor shouldn't be belittled. And nor do I attempt to do that. But unlike my brother, I can't give you accolades you don't deserve. So let's start with this Jimmy Butler versus Paul George. I said Paul George is a better player than Jimmy Butler. I didn't say leaps and bounds. That's like me saying I think Mitch Richmond was better than Reggie Miller. I do. I think Mitch Richmond was a better player than Reggie Miller. Listen to what I said. I think Mitch Richmond was a better player than Reggie Miller. For all intents and purposes, I am right if you look at the overall statistics, not just the hype, not the oohs and ahs. No, for overall player for player, I think you could have put Mitch Richmond on the fucking Pacers and done equivalent, if not better. That's just my opinion. But on that is not saying Reggie Miller ain't good. That's just saying how good I thought Mitch Richmond was. Now, let's talk about Tracy McGrady versus Jimmy Butler, which is in essence basically like the same thing. Except this time, I like the taller player. See, Reggie was taller than Mitch, but Mitch was a better defender and bigger, and Mitch was a better person to go to the hole, in my opinion. Mitch could shoot the three just as effective and efficient, but Mitch defense, to me, was leaps and bounds better than Reggie Miller. Now, let's go to this debate we were talking about. I'm just going to come with numbers, not my emotions. 2 years before they draft Paul George, Indiana was a sub 500 team. The year before they drafted him, they were a sub 500 team that did not make the playoffs. Larry Bird makes moves. He brings in a David West. They had Roy Hibbert, big sorry ass. I mean, come on. I'm a Georgetown guy, but Roy Hibbert was not a foundation creator. And Danny Granger was their leading scorer, the Long Granger. Now, keep in mind they were rebounding from that Reggie Miller's retirement and losing Artest and Steven Jackson type teams, all of those. So they were a sub 500 team. Conversely, the Bulls were just coming off of what? That year they drafted Jimmy Butler 30th because they were the best team in the East. Hell, Derrick Rose was what, MVP that year? Let's see. I have it up here. Give me a second. There we go. Chicago Bulls, 08. Remember, Vinny Del Negro, he finished 41 and 41, 08, 09. That's Derrick Rose's rookie year. They lose to Boston in the playoffs. The next year, 09, 10, the year before Jimmy Butler gets there, 41 and 41 again and make the playoffs and lose to the Cavaliers. I think that was LeBron James' last year there. Now the next year. Did they draft Jimmy that year? No, they didn't draft Jimmy that year. They were 62-20. Lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Miami Heat. I think that's Derrick Rose's MVP year. The very next year, they draft one Jimmy Butler, who at that time was just a role player off the bench, because at that time they were still stacked full of stars. You know, you got to understand, at that time the Bulls still had Luol, the Bulls still had Boozer. That was the strike shortened season. Remember, Derrick Rose gets hurt that year in that lockout season, and they lose to Philly in the first round. Remember that? That was Lou Williams and Andre Iguodala. Now, the next year, I believe that was Derrick Rose get hurt year. And let me check it out. Yeah. And it was Jimmy as a rookie, but Luol, Carlos, and the other guys ran the team. So remember, Luol was averaging 16. Booz averaged 16. Joe Kim was averaging a double-double with 4 assists and 2 blocks. They were getting 13 off Nate Robinson off the bench. Bellinelli had 9. Jimmy used to average 9. Rip Hamilton was on that team. Remember, they did it by committee that year. They did everything by committee that year and managed to get to the second round against the Heat, where they lost. That was without their MVP. This was always a talented team. And Jimmy Butler got a chance to grow up in it, and due to Derrick Rose's injuries in 14 and 15, Jimmy was able to become one of the top 2 players on the team. Now, they kept losing in the playoffs. Remember, they get bounced out. Remember, they lost the first round to the Wizards. That same year, the Wizards, I think, lost to the Pacers the next round. 14-15, Jimmy Butler was their leading scorer. With Paul Gasol and Derrick Rose averaging 17, they had a lot of players that you remember. Again, Jimmy was hurt that year too. He only played 65 games. But he averaged 20 a game. They beat the Bucks the first round, but lose in the second round to Cleveland. I think that was LeBron and Kyrie first year back. Yeah, LeBron first year back with Kyrie. And they lose to them. The next, you will see a few people getting crossed up and fried. And basically, what I was saying was, although Jimmy was not the reason that they were going down as a team, because I think as a team that lost to Derrick Rose, it was huge for them, even though Jimmy Butler's game was stepping up. But they brought in an old Dwayne Wade last year to help get them to the playoffs, because they knew Jimmy Butler alone could not get them there. And actually, Dwayne Wade helped them get to the playoffs, averaging 18 a game. Now, in the playoffs, Jimmy B was really the only guy that showed up with 22 a game. I mean, Dwayne had 15 a game, but that is not the Dwayne Wade we accustomed to seeing. Jimmy was averaging 22 a game, shooting 26% from 3 but 42 from the field. Similar to kind of the inverse of what Paul George was doing last year in the playoffs, shoot against LeBron and them, when he averaged 28, 8, and 7 a game. But my point is, Jimmy Butler has been surrounded by a lot better talent, in my opinion, than Paul George has. Yet Paul George has done more with his talent. I think Paul George has done more with his talent than Jimmy Butler has with his. And the way I see it is, Indiana has continuously done better than Chicago. Even when they go out in the same round, Paul George is more effective and more of an impact than Jimmy Butler is. I like Jimmy Butler. I truthfully do. But Jimmy Butler has played with an MVP Derrick Rose, a champion and sure Hall of Famer in Paul Gasol. He's played with rebounders and scorers like Boozer. He's played with Luol Deng, a two-way player. He's played with explosive off-the-bench players who, like Nate Robinson, who can blow up and give you 50 in a playoff game. He's played with a team with DJ Augustine in the playoffs in relief of Derrick Rose was giving you 20 points a game. Aaron Brooks was even doing the same thing with Tom Thibodeau's system. Jimmy Butler has played with Joakim Noah, who was one of the few centers to ever average 2 blocks, a steal, over 10 points, 11 some boards, and 5 some assists in the same season. Come on. I mean, when you look at it, Paul George has played with his second best player. His best player when he came to was Danny Granger and David West. He got a washed up Monte Ellis who couldn't really do anything because he was basically clashing for what Paul George was doing. Lance Stevenson statistically was one of the second best players on the team with Paul George that went deep into a playoff series. Really. I mean, really. If roster for roster, pound for pound, I believe that Jimmy Butler is not better than Paul George. But am I saying Jimmy Butler ain't better than J.R. Smith? No. But he's not better than Paul George. That's saying something. Am I saying I take C.J. McCollum, who I really like, over Jimmy Butler? No. Jimmy Butler gonna give him the blues. It's only a few people I would take over Jimmy Butler. He's 6'8", can play 2 and 3, and can guard multiple positions. But I think you have to admit Paul George is a better shooter. He's an inch taller. He's more athletic. His wingspan is longer. He's a better ball handler, a little better playmaker. Not much, but a little better playmaker. And I think a better rebounder. I just think all in all, Paul George is just a better Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is a poor man's Paul George. And that's not a knock on Jimmy Butler. That's just a testament to how great I think Paul George has become and can be in the future. And lo and behold, when I looked at it, I thought Jimmy Butler was younger. Actually, Paul George is. So, in response to my brother, I say, stop with that rubbing alcohol, man. And stop them false equivalent white man arguments. What I'm saying to you is, like I said last night, I think Minnesota cannot beat OKC in a 7-game series because I think their starters are better than Minnesota starters. I think the only advantage Minnesota has is Karl Anthony Towns versus Steven Adams. But when you have Karl Anthony Towns shooting 3-pointers and Steven Adams picking and rolling to the basket, dunking 7 times, I'm going to take those 7 dunks. That's what I said. When you got Andrew Wiggins shooting jump shots and y'all not getting up the floor and letting him get razzling, dazzling dunks and crazy alley-oops, and he not averaging over 20 a game, I think Carmelo will find a way to score his 17. When you say Jimmy versus Paul George, I just seen the other night Zach LaVine gave it to Jimmy 35. You don't think Paul George better than Zach LaVine? And I love Zach LaVine. Love his game. And Jimmy gave Zach LaVine 38. Zach LaVine don't play defense like Paul George. Then it's going to be Westbrook versus Teague. I like Westbrook. That's what I'm saying. Minnesota's bench consists of Crawford and Taj Gibson, and you say Derrick Rose is coming now. We'll have to see. But as for me, I'm going to take George over Jimmy, OKC over Minnie. 1 LVZ. I'm out.